All right, well, welcome everybody. I am Jeff Bellomo with Bellomo and Associates. If you are here today to learn how to sue your neighbor, how to file for bankruptcy, or how to file for divorce, I have absolutely no clue. No idea whatsoever. I believe down the street to the left, they could probably help you with that. If you're here to learn about estate planning and elder law, and specifically today, the nuts and bolts of Medicaid, then you came to the right place. We started these workshops several months ago at a request of our clients who were going through the Medicaid process and said, boy, it would have been nice to know before we got into the process what to expect. What could we do ahead of time to make it easier? What things should we expect in the process? And so we put this workshop together. It's gone very well. We've had great feedback, a lot of great comments, a lot of people who said, wow, that really helped the process. So we're continuing them, and hopefully you'll enjoy it as well. I am Jeff Bellomo. To my right is Michelle Poole, who will also be speaking today. She is our Director of Marketing at the office. She was formerly the Director of Medicaid. So it works out really well because when she was transitioning out of the Medicaid department into marketing, these workshops were things that we were in the process of working on, and said, wow, that would be great for her to do these because she has an interesting insight. She was the person for a long time who did the Medicaid applications, and she's now our outreach coordinator, which works out perfectly. So I will teach the first hour, which is the law portion, and Michelle will teach the second hour, which is the real nuts and bolts, the what to expect, what's gonna happen, what do we need conversation. I will be leaving at the hour mark. I have a very difficult time being in a room that I'm not speaking and shutting up. So I will leave so that Michelle is able to focus and take care of the second hour. What I will say to you though is, you're here today for 2 hours. In return, as a thank you, we're offering you a 1 hour free consult. So we'll certainly answer any questions. If anything comes up in the second hour that is a legal question that Michelle doesn't know the answer to, please feel free to write it down, or even if you don't want to ask her, just write it down when you come in for the free consult. I will certainly answer any questions that you have, so that way you can get those questions answered. Well, welcome to the nuts and bolts of Medicaid. The handout that's in front of you, which is our blue folders, this is a flyer about our firm. I call it propaganda, right? So what's really funny about it is people actually read it and you can see their body language change. They get to the part where it says, Masters of Laws in Taxation, Certified Elder Law Attorney. Really? I'm stuck with this guy for 2 hours. Is that back door locked? Can we get out? Right? I'm not as boring as I sound. And besides, you only have to hear me for an hour. This is the Certified Elder Law Attorney brochure and why it's important to work with somebody who is certified. Underneath that, there is a diagram of our office and the Medicaid process. I'm pretty sure that Michelle references this as well in her section, but the one thing that I just want to comment on, just as a big picture overview, you will notice that there is a big red line on this diagram. That big red line is there because we can't do anything further to help you and your family to protect assets or to file the Medicaid application until we have a complete and accurate set of 5 years of records. Michelle will go over what that means, what that entails, but I just like to show that so that we're all on the same page. And we created this diagram because we needed to show people this is a point that we can't get past without your help. Underneath that is a little kind of tidbit about Medicaid planning. And there's a notes page on this side. I encourage you to take notes so that you will remember what we have to say today. Also, you will see that there's a checklist. So what are the items that we're going to need as you go through the Medicaid process, which Michelle will also reference. And I'd like to enter into a contract with you. Now, I won't be in here at the end, but Michelle will, and Michelle will make sure that she asks as well. So here's our questions to you, all right? If you have fun, if you learn a lot, and if the time flies by, we're asking you to do one thing in return. Can anyone guess what that might be? Fill out the evaluation. Let us know how you did. Now, I know what you're thinking. Michelle, Jeff, this is some shameless attempt at getting my name and address. No, we have that already. We don't need that. No, we really like to know how we did. So on the grading scale, 5 is excellent job. You were a great team. This was well worth our time. 1 is Jeff, Michelle, you're both terrible. Please find a new profession. Now, I can speak for myself. I love my job way too much. And I also love my wife too much. And if I have to go home and tell her I need to find a new job, I might have to find a new wife. And I love her too much. So please use 1 sparingly. Is that fair? All right. So at the end, Michelle will ask you, did you have fun? Did you learn a lot and did the time go by quickly? And if the answer is yes, please fill that form out and let us know how we did. All right? Cool. We'll talk a little bit about why we do what we do, discuss what brought you here today and what you came to learn. We will discuss the legal Medicaid overview from a legal perspective. We will then talk about the nuts and bolts of Medicaid and the application, and then we will close and ask you to fill out the evaluation. All right? Now, how many of you, when you met me, the first thing you thought of to yourself was, wow, that's Jeff? He's a lot younger than I expected. Anybody? Look at all the smiles right now, right? You're all saying that. Now, why is that? What were you expecting? You were expecting Bill, right? So Bill's he's the other attorney in our office. He's a brilliant man. He's the legal technical director of the firm. But the reason that a lot of people don't expect me to be Jeff is because you expected me to be a lot older, right? You expected me to be older. And the reason for that is because most elder law attorneys were formerly estate planning attorneys. They did a lot of wills. And then what happens over time? Over time, their clients get older. And as their clients get older, what happens to them? They get older, right? So they wake up one day and they go, well, I'm older. My clients are older. I must be an elder law attorney. If you check that brochure out that I referenced earlier, the Certified Elder Law Attorney brochure, I'm pretty sure that there's no requirement that I be older. Right? The reason that I got into this area of the law was because my mother, 2 weeks before the bar exam, I was getting ready to take the bar. We were out in Somerset, Pennsylvania, and after the wedding that we attended, you know those bag cell phones in the late 90s with all the cords? You remember that? Mine rang after midnight, and it was my dad. Well, when dad calls you after midnight, and mom and dad go to bed by 9:30 if it's a crazy wild weekend, what does that mean? Not good. So the next morning, we rushed out to Pittsburgh to see my mom. She had passed out at the Benedum watching a show that night in Pittsburgh. Turns out she had cancer. So the surgeon says to us, look, we're going to remove her several feet of her colon, other organs. We have a lot of major things we need to do. She's going to have to go through chemo, radiation. We think that she'll definitely come through. However, you might want to start checking into in-home care. You might want to start checking into personal care options, assisted living facilities, nursing homes. Well, as soon as you start saying that, what's the normal thing that happens? All these questions start coming through your mind, right? What's in-home care? How much does it cost? What's the difference between personal care and assisted? Nursing homes, what does that mean? Is dad going to lose the house? How's dad going to pay for it? Is mom going to be okay, right? And the surgeon's response was classic. What do you think the surgeon's response was? I don't know. You should go talk to a lawyer. So I did. I went to a lawyer in Pittsburgh, and it was $300. So the receptionist met me at the door. She took my credit card before I could even go in the office. At the end of the hour, he says, I have answers to all your questions and solutions to all your problems. I said, great. He says, oh, well, you have to pay me for that. You paid to sit with me for an hour. Now here's the cost of the plan, and here's what happens. And if you step foot out of this office today, you forfeit your $300. So I forfeited my $300. I left and I showed him. You know what I did? I went to another lawyer's office. And what do you think happened? Same thing. Yeah, I showed him all right, didn't I? Right? So now I'm out $600. Thursday of that week, my mom comes too. She's now out of the surgery. She's coming down off the pain medication. And then right away, she starts asking the questions. What are the differences? How are we going to pay for it? Is dad going to lose the house? And what was my answer? Wow. I don't know. Right? What do you mean you don't know? You spent $600. Yeah, I know, but this is what happened. Promise me that won't happen, Jeff. When you're a lawyer, promise me that won't happen. Well, here's the thing. You get a JD, you get an ESQ after your name, you get an LLM after your name, you get a CELA after your name, you get an estate planning certificate after your name. What do you need? A JOB, because you're broke. No money. Well, when you're a young lawyer with no money, you have to go work for somebody, don't you? And when you're a young associate, what's your job? To bill. $300 an hour. If you hire me today, I became one of them. 2008, I called my mom. I said, Mom, I'm quitting my job. I'm going to go be a social worker or a teacher like I should have been from the beginning. I called her back 3.5 minutes later and said, Mom, we must have got disconnected. No, we didn't. She said, I hung up on you. So what do you mean you hung up on me? Most parents are proud of their kids when they follow their dreams. And she said, and I would be, but you're not. You're not running to a profession. You're running from something. You always wanted to be a lawyer. Why can't you be a lawyer, but also be a social worker and a teacher at the same time and help people? What happened to us in that hospital room should not happen to other people. They should know the answers to those things before that time. That's not the time to be finding out the answers. Mom, 2008, worst economy since the Great Depression. My wife is pregnant. What are you suggesting? She said, quit your job and go open up your own firm. Well, here we are, right? And as far as I know, we're still doing okay. Is that true? Okay, good. Just in case, it's 2017, heading into 2018, and we have based our entire practice on education. So how much did today cost you? Nothing. And at the beginning of the meeting, or the beginning of the workshop today, I told you, if you come back in, I will offer you a free consult. So what will the first meeting cost you? Nothing. I figured by the end of 3 hours, you're going to know. Do I like him? Do I trust him? And do I think he knows what the heck he's talking about, right? And do I like his team, right? You're going to get an opportunity to meet one of our team members. I think it's important to know who's in the firm and what they are and what their values are. So that's who we are, and that's why we do it. I could literally go through every team member and tell you the reason why they work here, right? They could all go somewhere else and make more money, but they don't because they love what we do and how we help and what the reason is that we do it. So I want to, they're all wonderful. I got to introduce the people that you will primarily be in contact with if you ever do anything with our firm. But that's why we do what we do, and it's all about the family. And what happened to us in that hospital room hopefully will never happen to you. At least you'll have the answers. Now, why do most people attend these workshops? All right, well, they have answers. Well, they have questions, we have answers, right? At least that's how it's supposed to work. All right, so we have the answers and you have the questions. So what are the questions that people come in for? So the number one reason why people attend this workshop is they want to know, can we protect our stuff? Right? Is it possible to protect our stuff from the government, from long-term care, from our family? And if so, how? Jeff, what's a trust? And what are the differences between revocable and irrevocable? I have heard, Jeff, that I should give my stuff away. I should give it away, and if I do, I have to wait 60 months for it to be safe. Are those two things true? Is there anything I can do ahead of time? I hear the Medicaid process is a little daunting. What can I do ahead of time to make it easier? And what should I expect? What does it feel like? What does it look like? What should I know ahead of time? Jeff, is the power of attorney that my mother's real estate attorney drafted for her going to be good enough? Is any power good enough? Well, how did I do? It took 15 years to put that list together, right? Was it pretty much what you came for? If we answer those questions today, would that be a good use of your time? All right. Now, let us know if there's anything else. Certainly feel free to do that. Pre-planning versus crisis planning, right? So what's the difference? Well, what's pre-planning? Yeah, sipping, having a drink, right? What's crisis? Oh my goodness, what are we doing here? All right. The way that I teach this is there are two roads. This road is pre-planning, right? i.e., nice. This side is crisis planning. What crisis planning means to me is, Jeff, within the next 6 months to a year, a loved one is going to need care. It's going to need skilled level care, either at home or in the nursing home. All right? It's more of an imminent thing, right? Also, we don't have enough time to pre-plan. And we'll talk today to really effectively do pre-planning, to make a trust, which we'll talk about, worthwhile. You need at least 2.5 years to have the assets in the trust to really make it worthwhile. All right, so that's pre-planning and crisis planning. You see the difference? All right, so the difference is planning ahead and being calm, or at the last minute trying to do what we can. Now, the good news is we can still do stuff, so it's not too late, but it's not necessarily the most enjoyable thing that you'll go through. Activities of daily living, all right? So activities of daily living are what tells us what level of care a person needs. So the activities of daily living are eating, bathing, dressing, toileting, transferring, walking, all right? Don't ask me to do that out of order or without my fingers, because I can't. I memorized it that way. If you don't need help with any of those, you're independent, okay? If you need help with one or two of those, that is a personal care or assisted living, all right? Notice it's the same level of care, right? Pennsylvania a few years ago had legislation that came down, and they wanted to, if anyone wants to call themselves assisted living facilities, they have to go through a licensing procedure. Most of the local personal care homes didn't choose to go through it because they didn't feel that it was worth the effort, because it wasn't helping the care. A couple did, but in terms of what they provide, it's a very similar level of care, all right? Now, if I need help with 3 or more activities of daily living, or have severe or chronic dementia, that is skilled level care, all right? Where can I get skilled level care? Well, in a nursing home. That's one place. And the next place would be in your own home under the waiver program. Okay, so Medicaid has the ability, or medical assistance will pay for your care in a nursing home or in the home under the Medicaid program, as long as you require what? Skilled level care. Nursing home costs. So currently in York, we're looking at about $10,000 to $12,000 a month for nursing home care. Now, what's the key? What do most people want to do? Stay home. Right? So our goal, or our job, is to figure out how can we get people the care and keep them home, right? But sometimes that's just not possible, right? Sometimes we can't keep them home, or we can't get them qualified for the waiver program, and then we end up having to go to assisted or to nursing homes, depending on the situation. How are we going to pay for this? All right, that's real money. That's real money. So what's the first way to pay for it? Right? Now, this is a rhetorical question. Don't answer it. If you and your spouse end up in the nursing home at the same time to the tune of $24,000 a month, how long could you go? Don't answer that. Don't answer that. But do you see? It could hurt, right? Pretty quickly. Now, long-term care insurance is a good option, right? What I like about long-term care insurance is that it will pay out in your home to get you care in your home, or it will pay out in the personal care home so that you can stay in the personal care home a little longer. But in a Medicaid workshop, I'm guessing that most of you are here because a crisis is probably more imminent than not. Is that a fair statement, right? So buying long-term care insurance for the people that you're here today for, it's too late. Okay, so if we already have it, it can certainly assist us with paying for that care. But if we don't have it, I don't think this is the time to be spending a lot of time on it. What I will say is that we offer weekly pre-planning workshops, which focuses on which side, right? It's going to focus on the other side, and we will talk about long-term care insurance in there, the different types of policies and why they can be beneficial. For the purpose of today, it's probably a little late, but I just wanted to show you that that is one way to pay. And then the last option is the government pays, right? So that's Medicaid, medical assistance, right? And that's the last option. So let's talk a little bit about what are some of the government programs. If I need care in my home or in an assisted living facility, right, what are my options? Well, for care in the home, I would say your biggest option is VA aid and attendance benefits. So let's talk a little bit about what that means. First test, you have to have been a veteran. The veteran had to have served 90 days, 1 day of which was active wartime. Now that doesn't mean you had to be in the war, right? You had to be active. You could have even been stateside. Or the surviving spouse of a veteran who meets those criteria. Now, what's the key in order to be a surviving spouse of a veteran? What must have happened to the veteran? He must have passed away, right? So we had a long-term client of ours call recently and said, Jeff, I just want to know about the surviving spouse of a veteran benefit. And I said, I am so sorry to hear about Ted. Like, that's terrible. I mean, they've been clients of mine for years. And she said, what do you mean you're sorry to hear about Ted? I said, well, you're calling me about the surviving spouse of a veteran benefit. Ted must have passed away. She said, no, he's standing right here. I said, well, unless you're planning something, how do you plan to qualify for the surviving spouse? She said, oh, he has to be deceased? Yeah, he would be. So for the veteran benefit pays out about $2,200 a month, and the surviving spouse of a veteran pays out about $1,100 a month. And that's literally a check from the VA. So we have to meet the criteria. And then the next thing they look at, they say, okay, is your income less than your cost of care? So if you're bringing care in the home to care for you, and your bill is $3,000, your income has to be what? Less than $3,000. Now, what if it isn't? Let's say you're $100 short, and you're paying for care, and the care that you're paying for is only $2,900, and your income is $3,000. What should you probably do next month? Bring in a little more care. Make it go over what number? Yeah, $3,000, right? So the income test isn't necessarily all that hard. All right, for that benefit, the person needs to require assistance with 2 activities of daily living. Remember, we just talked about the ADLs, and they have to have their cost of care exceed their income. And finally, their assets cannot be over a threshold amount. So the most that a veteran can have or a surviving spouse is $80,000. But there are ways currently under the rules that you can plan with trusts. Now, I always say, if you want to learn about trust in detail, come to our pre-planning workshop, right? Because that's more about the pre-planning side. But there are ways to do that to get a veteran under the threshold amounts. All right, so veteran or surviving spouse, the veteran must have served 90 days, 1 day of which was active wartime. Income has to be less than the cost of care, and your assets have to be below at least $80,000. All right, so that's that test, and that will pay for you to assist for care in your home or in a personal care home. Now, if you require skilled level care, which we said can be in 2 different places, one is at home under the waiver program, the other is in the nursing home. All right, so that now is going to be Medicaid. Make sense? So Medicaid at home is called the waiver program, and in the nursing home it's called Medicaid. All right, so pre-planning. All right, let's talk a little bit about pre-planning. How do we protect assets? Well, I just alluded to it, didn't I? The way that we would do it in a pre-planning context, which is this side, would be a trust. Now, the trusts that most people know about or understand are trusts that are for people with tax issues. Right? If you have a federal estate tax problem, which means you have more than $10.98 million. Yeah, we're all smirking right now, right? That's what most people know about trusts. That has nothing to do with the type of trust that we teach from a pre-planning context. The trust that we're talking about, you can be in control of. You can change the terms of the document. You can fire your kids if you don't like what they do, all right? It's a unique animal unto itself, because we're not worried about taxes. People have more than $11 million, they're probably not banging down my door to help them, right? They probably have much bigger people helping with that. So less than that, that's where the sweet spot is. That's where we can do a lot more with trust. You can be in more control. We don't have to file separate trust tax returns. We don't have to pay higher trust tax rates. None of that applies as long as you don't have more than $10.98 million. But in order to make pre-planning worthwhile, I always tell people, you need to really have the assets funded in the trust for at least 2.5 to 3 years. So in your heart, you have to believe that your loved one will be able to stay out of the nursing home or not require skilled level care at home for at least 2.5 to 3 years. That's really where pre-planning makes sense. Now, if you're sitting there saying, that's not possible, Jeff. There's no way we have that kind of time. All that means is what? We're coming down this side. We're on the crisis side. Pre-planning, it's great to do. And even if we do it and we do a trust and we're out here, what happens if in 6 months your loved one falls, breaks a hip? Well, basically we have to do what? We come back to the beginning and then we go down crisis. So you're not hurting your family, you're not hurting your loved ones, you're just not getting the bang for your buck from the trust, okay? So a concept that I created a few years ago to help people understand what is involved with this. What are the things that we need to understand? I call it my 3 lands, all right? So come with me over here. We are in tax land, T-A-X land. All right, this is tax land, long-term care land, estate planning land. Now, what did you notice about those 3 lands? Very different, separate, distinct, right? Did you pick up on that? Okay. In estate planning land, you know what everybody tells me? Jeff, I want to control my property while I'm alive and well. Key word? Control. Anybody want to give up control? Come on, my last name's Belomo. B as in boy. E-L-L-O-M-O. No, it didn't work again, Michelle. All right, estate planning land. All right, somebody help me out. Where am I? Tax land. Did you know that in tax land, you could give away what is called an annual exclusion gift every year? $14,000 a year currently in 2017. I just read yesterday that it's going up to $15,000 in 2018, which at 14 grand, let's think about this. A husband and wife who have 2 children who are married, fairly common fact pattern, right? That husband and wife could give away $112,000 a year, tax-free. Tax-free to the giver, tax-free to the receiver. What do you think? Pretty good, right? Plus, that same husband and wife could also give away $5.49 million during the husband's life, $5.49 million during the wife's life, for a total of $10.98 million, plus $112,000 a year. How much did I just tell you you could give away? Everything, right? How many of us have more than $11 million plus $112,000 a year? Right? That would be nice, wouldn't it? Essentially, I just told you you could give everything away at what tax consequence? Right? Pretty good. Well, thanks everybody for coming. Well, now wait a minute. What land is this? Where am I now? All right, so now what happened? I fell, I broke a hip. I need help. I need help. The government says, particularly in Pennsylvania, look, we are more than happy to help you. The rules to qualify for Medicaid, I think I'm going to surprise a lot of people today with how lenient they are and how easy it is. I really do, right? But the one thing the government says is, before we'll do that, we need to look back. We're going to look back how many years? 5. And what are we looking for in the 5 years? Gifts. Gifts. But you were in that workshop with me. You know that overweight curly-haired man, Jeff? He told us in that workshop that we could give away $14,000 a year, which was a total of $112,000 for that couple that had 2 kids that are married, plus 5.49, plus 5.49. You were sitting there. You were in the room with me. Didn't he say that? Yeah. In what land? We're not in tax land anymore, Toto. Where are we now? You see the problem? Right? Every lawyer, accountant, advisor, we all live where? Yeah. I want you all to remember something. Now, this is a very legal technical comment, so I want you to really focus on this. A gift is non-take-a-backable. One more time for effect, okay? It's okay to laugh. It's okay. A gift is non-take-a-backable. Meaning, if my father puts my name on the house, who owns it? Subject to whose divorce? Whose nursing home? Whose car accident? Whose stupidity? Trust me, my dad doesn't want to be subject to my stupidity. All right? Because a gift is non-take-a-backable. And if you give it away, how well do you control it? You don't. You know what we find in our office? Everybody comes into these meetings, particularly the pre-planning meetings, but even in this meeting, and they say, I want to reduce taxes. I want to reduce taxes. Look, if you don't have more than 10.98 million, there's no federal estate tax. The federal estate tax is where you're getting taxed at least 40%. All right, now that's real. And if you have more than 10.98 million, we really need to talk. And what I'd like you to do is after the workshop tonight, I want you to come up to me very quietly, pull me aside and say, Jeffrey, I have that problem. I will call my wife and I will tell her that I won't be home for dinner tonight because I'm planning for your estate. But for the rest of us, is that really going to be a problem? Probably not, right? So then my dad says to me, but that inheritance tax, Jeffrey, inheritance tax. Okay, so let's talk about that. Pennsylvania has an inheritance tax. So if you're a resident of Pennsylvania and you transfer property, Pennsylvania says they want what? They want some money. All right, so to transfer assets in Pennsylvania, the inheritance tax to a spouse is a 0 rate. Now, what rate did I say? Did I say it was exempt? I did not. That's significant. Years ago in Pennsylvania, there was a 6% tax to spouses. Now, I don't believe that that's going to happen anytime soon, but I think it's important to let people know, look, it's a 0 rate currently, which means what could the government do if they wanted to? Potentially they could change it, okay? Currently, it's a 0 rate to spouses, 4.5% to lineal descendants. So that's parents, that's children, that's grandchildren. 4.5%, 12% to siblings, and 15% to anyone else in the world, including those lovely nieces and nephews. All right, now, my father says, see, Jeff, that's why I'm going to put your name on the deed of the house. I said, over my dead body? He said, that can be arranged. I said, no, Dad. No. I don't want you to do that. Let's talk. Dad, why would you want to put my name on the deed of the house? I said, I just told you. I want to get it out of my name so that I can get it away from the 5-year look back in long-term care land, right? And I also want to avoid tax. I can avoid the Pennsylvania inheritance tax for you, Jeffrey, if you own that property at least 1 year before I die. I say, well, Dad, all of that's true. Except the issue is, if I own the property, now it's subject to my divorce, my nursing home, my car accidents, right? He said, I'm not worried about that. You're responsible. You do asset protection for a living. You're in a great marriage. Guys, can I promise my parents that my wife won't find somebody better looking, smarter, right? No, I can't promise them that. Can't she go find Biff the pool boy? Yeah, no doubt she can, right? So can I promise my parents that I won't get in a car accident and kill 10 people? No, right? I could hit black ice. Can I promise my parents that I won't have a stroke and go into a nursing home? If I keep doing that, it's going to happen today. Oof, right? No. Remember this phrase. Bad things happen to good people. And if I own that property and something bad happens to me, not only did I punish me, but who else is affected? My father, right? Here's the other thing that he didn't realize. He paid $20,000 for the house. it's worth about $200,000 today. If he gifts me that property, meaning he puts my name on the deed. Now, we all agree, no tax, right? We don't have anywhere near 10.98 million. That's not an issue, okay? So no tax. I own the property. From a tax perspective, my basis is what my father's basis was. Now, when my dad passes away, what am I probably going to do with a house that's 3 hours away from here and has tenants from HE double hockey sticks? I'm going to sell it, right? I'm going to sell it. Is that fair? Okay, now, I did avoid the 4.5% inheritance tax. Dad transferred it to me outside of a year. I avoided the 4.5% inheritance tax. But because I didn't pay the inheritance tax, I don't get a step up in basis, which means the value to me for the property is $20,000. If I sell it for $200,000, what's 200 minus 20? $180,000 subject to capital gains tax. Now, let's think about it. Would I rather pay 4.5% on 200 or 23.8 on 180? Do you see it? Everybody's so focused on getting rid of this 4.5%. Here's my comment. It is too important for you to do what during your life? Control. You got to control it. It's too important to control it. If you don't have more than 10.98 million, stop worrying about taxes. Hopefully I just proved to you that actually it could be better to actually pay the 4.5% inheritance tax because you avoid that capital gains tax. And that's not just on a house, right? A lot of parents have highly appreciated stocks and assets. Well, that capital gains tax applies to that as well. Does that make sense? All right, very good. Always remember 3 lands. Most important to control your property while you're alive and well. All right, crisis planning. Well, that's really why most of you are here today. All right. Medicaid is the government program that will pay. It'll pay in the nursing home or it'll pay at home under the waiver program as long as you need skilled level care. Now, what are the 3 prongs? I have to be medically qualified. So if you go back to our test earlier, that means that I need assistance with how many activities of daily living? 3, or have severe chronic dementia. All right, so that's the first test. Now, can Jeff or Michelle or Christine, who is our Medicaid director, can any of us help you get medically qualified? No. Who's going to make that determination? Right? A doctor, area agency on aging, right? And we'll get into that. But we cannot help you with that. So in our business, in our minds, the very first step is for you to make sure that your loved one needs skilled level care. Because we can't help you. That's something that the person has to require. Then we need to be financially qualified. That's where we come in. Right? We could help you get financially qualified, and you need to have complete and accurate records. 5 years of statements, which Michelle will talk about. And as we've stated earlier, without these, we really can't help you do this. You have to have the statements in order to be able to get financially qualified. How many of you have heard that they're going to take your home? Yeah, you have to give your stuff away. And if you give it away, you have to wait 60 months. What do you think? You've all heard it? It's all not true. Do you like how I said myths? What does myths mean? It means not true, right? So the thing that we always say is, how do you know if you qualify? We offer a free consultation. You come in, we run the numbers, we tell you to the penny what we can do and what the cost would be. Now, the one story that I want to share with you to kind of give you a little insight into how this works is a client by the name of Mary was referred to us by a nursing home up the hill. Okay? Her husband went into the nursing home the day before. She is panicked. What does Mary think she's going to lose? Everything, right? she is convinced that she's losing everything. So when she came in, I said, Mary, what did the nursing home social worker tell you? She said, the social worker told me that you would be able to protect 100% of the assets, and that I would be able to keep those assets and I wouldn't lose anything, and that for the next 30 years that I live, hopefully, right, knock on wood, I'll have assets to spend. And I said, Mary, that's true. She said, that can't be true. I said, what do you mean it can't be true? She said, well, that doesn't sound right. I said, no, Mary, that's true. She said, well, how do I know that? I said, well, Mary, you were referred to me by the nursing home, right? Yeah. I said, and they told you I could do it? Yeah. That's what I'm telling you. Maybe you're in cahoots together. I had to look up cahoot, because I don't know what's cahoot mean, right? So here's the end result. All right. The end result is we did get Mary's husband on Medicaid. Mary's husband is still in the nursing home. He's still alive, and he's still doing quite well. We were able to protect 100% of the assets for Mary. She has kept and retained all of them in her name. She is happy as pie. Now, that's a good ending, right? Well, here's the only issue. Where did Mary really want to keep her husband? Yeah. So we had a conversation, and I said, Mary, here's the thing. If he stays in the nursing home that he's in the same bed that he's in, nothing will change. We can get him qualified for Medicaid and preserve those assets that I just talked to you about. All right. However, if you take him home, which is what you want, I cannot get him qualified for the Medicaid waiver program. Remember I told you there's a Medicaid waiver program in the home? Well, the one difference with the Medicaid waiver program is that the waiver program has an income cap limit. The income cap limit says that her husband's income cannot exceed $2,205 a month. Now, really the only income that we're looking at for that is pension and Social Security, because we can essentially make investment income and stuff go away. So we're really focused on Social Security and pension. Well, when we ran the numbers, her husband's income was $2,300. Well, is that more than or less than $2,205? More than. So she says to me, Jeff, I don't understand this. You're telling me you could protect 100% of the assets if he goes into the nursing home? I said, yes. She said, but if I take him home, you can't get him on that program because of his income. I said, that is also true. She said, but I received 2 quotes from 2 in-home care agencies to get 24/7 in-home care, and it was like $17,000 a month. Yeah. She said, Jeff, if I pay $17,000 a month out of pocket, I'm going to run out of money. I don't have all that. And I'm young. I still have 30 years that I think I'm going to live. I need money. So you're putting me in a situation where I have to decide between what? Bringing him home and spending down potentially everything, or letting him stay where he was. Now, what Mary decided was she would go visit him every day. She's there for 12 hours a day. But at night, what does she get to do? She goes home. And that's huge for her because her husband has dementia. At night, what does he tend to do, do you think? He wanders. So when he was home, she wasn't sleeping. Well, you can't do that very long where you're not sleeping. So while it might not be ideal that she couldn't bring him home, we were able to get him qualified. We were able to protect the assets, and she's able to spend every day with him. All right. So what did I just tell you that we could protect with a married couple for the community spouse? What percentage? 100%, right? Now, for a single individual who is not married or who is widowed, we could protect at least 50%, right? Generally, I say 50 to 60%. Now, does that surprise anybody? Yeah, right? You're all shaking your head. Because what did you expect? In crisis, if you didn't plan ahead, how much would you lose? Everybody thinks they're going to lose everything, right? Pennsylvania is currently a very, very good state. Now, I had the privilege of traveling for several years teaching lawyers across the country. All right, I got to teach them Medicaid, trust law, tax law. And one of the things that became very apparent to me was that when I would say that we could still protect 100% for the community spouse, everybody in the audience would say, oh, you can still do that? They still allow that in Pennsylvania? What does that mean? A lot of other states did what? They stopped it. So as it relates to us in this room, here's the good news and here's the bad news. The good news is, for those of you who already have a loved one that's going to need skilled level care at home or in the nursing home, you're probably on which side of the prong? You're in the crisis side. The laws are not going to change that fast. They're not. Nothing works that fast in the government. We're not going to get laws. We're not going to get that stuff happening that quickly. So for those of you who are here to learn about crisis Medicaid, all those things I just told you, we're good. Now, for those of us sitting there thinking, okay, but I don't want this to happen to me and to my kids. We learned a lesson from this. We waited, we did nothing. Okay, it's fine to know that my family member will be okay and that we can still protect, but what can I do, right? How can I make sure in the future? Well, that's pre-planning. And why that becomes more important is because you want to get in under today's rules. You want to get these plans in effect because you don't want to be relying on crisis 100% for a spouse or at least 50% for a single individual. Because if you do nothing and wait and they change the rules, what happens? Right? You're under the new ones. So that's why we like to kind of get you thinking ahead of time. Crisis works well right now. So for those of you who might have that situation, we got you covered. Okay, we can absolutely help you. For those of you who are just here for information, you might want to come to the pre-planning workshop and learn about this side of the prong to learn how can we do it ahead of time. Okay? Now, one of the questions that we often get is, can I use the power of attorney that my mom's real estate attorney or that my mom's divorce attorney or general practice attorney drafted? All right? Here's the issue. Pennsylvania says that in a power of attorney, we have to state with specificity, I just like saying that word, specificity, every power that we're granting. All right, so what does specificity mean? Specifically. So I have to state in the power of attorney every power that I'm giving. And if I don't, and you lose capacity, guess what? You can't do it. Now, think about the impossibility that they're asking us to do. They're asking us to create a document that's going to list every single thing that your agent will do on your behalf at a point in time that we don't know when it's going to be, right? We don't know your health. We don't know your finances. We don't know what's going to be happening. We don't know what we're going to need. Well, the downside of that is that it forces me to put everything in this document. I mean, we have to load the document up with every power that we need. Now, most elder law attorneys, which I actually dislike the name elder law. Elder law implies elderly, doesn't it? I mean, when you say elder law, don't you immediately think elderly? It really, I don't think, should be called elder law. I think it should be called asset protection law, asset preservation law, benefits planning. I mean, I could go on for 10 minutes about all the names you could call it. What I dislike about elder law is that implies elderly. Well, we have clients who are 30, who had a stroke, who are in a nursing home, right? We have clients that are 30 who got in a car accident and now are in a nursing home. That happens. Well, were they elderly? No, but didn't they need the exact same thing that a 78-year-old might need if they're in a nursing home? So the issue is elder law attorneys focus on making sure that in the future your family has the ability to do the planning. I represented a business owner at the beginning of my career, and I would take his calls on the weekend. I would take his calls at night, right? And I'd never send him a bill because I was trying to build that relationship so that whenever something came up, he would think of me. It went really well, and then one day he calls and he says, Jeff, I need to get my estate planning done. Yes, right? We built a relationship. He came to the workshop. He came to the free vision meeting that I give after a workshop. At the end of the meeting, he decided the plan that he needed. I told him the cost, and he said, well, you know, Jeff, I can save $75 if I go downtown. I said, really? I've represented you for years, and you're telling me that over $75 you're going to go downtown? He said, well, yes, this is business. Okay. So how much did the relationship matter, right? Not at all. But that's not the point of the story. The point of the story is he did go downtown. He did go to a very, very good, reputable estate planning firm. No question asked, right? His kids then called me later and said, Dad fell, broke a hip. The underlying dementia came to the forefront, and he is now in a nursing home. We have heard that you can protect assets. We were referred to you by several people. Is that true? And what was my answer? Yeah, right? I can protect at least 50% for a single individual. Remember that from a few minutes ago? They were ecstatic. They came in for that free consult, right, that we talked about. They came in for the free consult. I ran all the numbers. I said, well, here's the good news. I could protect at least $300,000. What do you think? Were they happy? They were ecstatic. But then I said, I need to see the power of attorney. Well, what do you mean? You drafted it. No, actually I didn't. What do you mean you didn't? I said, your dad went somewhere else. So we looked at the power of attorney. It did not specifically state that we could do asset protection planning, Medicaid planning, asset preservation, gifting. There was a lot of limitations, which is very common. Well, was I able to protect $300,000? No. The family lost all $300,000. When they were leaving my office, it's a vision that I will never forget. The son put his arm around his sister and said, like typical dad, well, at least he saved $75. Right? Now, did he save $75? Up front he did. But did he really save $75? Well, no, because he lost $300. So my point is not that general practice attorneys or, they're not bad. That's not what I'm saying. Please don't misread me. All I'm saying was that if you needed heart surgery, would you go to a podiatrist? Probably not, right? But yet, why do we not think twice about it when it's a legal thing, right? Well, aren't all attorneys equal? I don't think so, because I think in a specialty area, you need to do this all the time, right? A friend of mine is a family law and criminal law attorney. We were meeting for lunch one day, and I looked at his website before we met for lunch. And I saw that his website said, now doing estate planning and elder law. And I thought, wow, how cool is this? My really good friend is going to make big news today. He's going to announce to me that what? He's my competitor. How cool. And we're there, and we're halfway through the lunch. And do you think he told me? No. But about halfway through the lunch, he says to me, Jeff, can I ask you a hypothetical question? Hypothetically, if you had a 78-year... How hypothetical do you think this fact pattern was? It wasn't hypothetical. It was his first case that he got as a elder law attorney. And guess who didn't know the answers? Him. I answered all of his questions. In what land? Tax land. Oops. So we're leaving lunch. He's getting in his car. And as he's closing the car door, I said, hey, here's the problem. I answered all of your questions in tax land. What are you going to do when your hypothetical client runs out of money, right? Because he gave it all away. And we know that a gift is what? Non-take-a-backable. What are you going to do when he goes into a nursing home and he tries to qualify for Medicaid and he gets denied? And I finished closing the door and I kept walking down the street. All of a sudden I hear in the distance, Jeff, what's Medicaid? Now doing elder law. What does it take to call yourself an elder law attorney? I just did it. Elder law. Wait, let me try again. Elder law. How did I do? That's all it takes. Now, you can't call yourself a certified elder law attorney unless you get through the test. And the generic pass rate on that exam is like 19%. It's one of the hardest exams in the country to get through. Now, that's just one level, right? So you got to be comfortable that the person that you're working with understands all of this, because most attorneys will tell you what to do in one land, tax land. They don't completely understand the other lands. Any questions? Yes.
About the income test for the waiver program.
Yes.
how does that figure with the married couple? How do you split the income between them?
So for waiver, they're only looking at the income of the person who's receiving the care. So they're going to look at that person's Social Security and that person's pension. And if it's greater than $2,205, they can't qualify. What I believe you're referring to is in a nursing home situation, right, where there's a community spouse and an institutionalized spouse. We're going to let the community spouse keep a certain portion of the institutionalized spouse's income if the community spouse's income is less than $2,205. Okay, so it's a similar concept. You can do the same thing in the waiver program at home, where you can still have the community spouse keeping a portion of the institutionalized spouse. I realize that they're still at home, but still. That's called a community spouse resource allowance. No, that is called a minimum monthly maintenance needs allowance, which is what the community spouse is allowed to keep. So, Michelle, I believe you talk about that.
I talk about the resource assessment.
Okay, so for the income, there is a certain amount that's a minimum amount that they'll let the community spouse keep, and I believe that that's what you're referring to.
And I did have another question, which is simpler.
Okay, good.
For the VA benefits.
Yes.
To be a surviving spouse, I assume you have to be married at the time that the veteran died.
Correct.
Not divorced.
Correct. Not divorced and not remarried, I understand. Yeah. I saw a hand over here.
Just piggying back off of that, in your example with Mary and the spouse,
Yes.
you can only protect his assets. You can do nothing to protect his income other than what you just talked about.
Correct. The income allowance. So correct. So what'll happen is, so let's say the community, I'm making this up, but let's say the community spouse's income is $1,000 and the institutionalized spouse's income is $3,000. We will allow the community spouse to keep a portion of the institutionalized spouse's income to get that person up to $2,205 or the current minimum monthly maintenance needs allowance. Okay? Then above that, the institutionalized spouse can keep $45 personal needs allowance. So that's the personal needs allowance that the institutionalized spouse is allowed to keep. Once you have factored the community spouse's amount and the personal needs allowance for the institutionalized spouse, the remainder of the institutionalized spouse's income goes to the nursing home.
Right, and no amount of pre-planning will change that.
Correct.
You're only talking about assets.
Correct. You got it, man. Absolutely.
Yeah, when somebody was foolish and gave away all their property, and it's not take it back, so they have nothing, and they don't qualify for Medicaid. What happens?
Are we here?
How do they pay for it?
That was like hip hop there. Usually it's a horse, not a hip hop. Okay, so let's talk about it. So the question was, person gifts everything away in tax land. Now they're in a nursing home, they're receiving care. So what'll happen is they'll fill out the Medicaid application, they will apply, they look back 5 years, what do they find? The gifts. So they say, okay, well, there's a penalty period, okay? The penalty period is not 60 months. 60 months only has to do with the look back period. The look back period is simply stated what goes in the box, okay? So 5 years of statements goes in the box. The penalty of the gifts is based upon the amount of the gifts that were given. So they'll penalize you at $321.95 a day for the gifts. But that doesn't mean you have to wait 60 months, right? Do you see that? Okay, now, in your case, your fact pattern is the person has no money. So the caseworker penalizes that individual. So let's say that the penalty is a year, right? Let's just say it was enough money that there's a year penalty. So Medicaid won't pay for a year, right? The nursing home is providing care, aren't they? Okay, so the nursing home says, hello, we want to be paid. So they go to the individual who's on Medicaid or who wants to get on Medicaid and they have no money because they're spent down or because they gifted the money away. So can they provide it? No. Now, in Pennsylvania, we have something called a familial responsibility statute, which says any parent, child, or spouse can be held liable for the parent, child, or spouse's nursing home bill. Okay. Did I say that the child had to be the power of attorney? No. Did I say that the child had to be the one who received the gifts? No, I didn't, right? What did I say? Any child, parent, or spouse. So, in a hypothetical that we're going to make up, the house went to the son, Jeffrey. Okay? Seems like a good hypothetical. So Jeff gets the house, but Jeff's a deadbeat. So Jeff sold the house or encumbered the house to where there's no value left in the house. Dad's in the nursing home. He applies. He gets denied because of the transfer of the house. Jeff has no money. But Jeff does have a sister. Who is the nursing home going to sue? Are they going to come after the deadbeat? No. They're going to go after the sister who has the money. Now, think about this. What does the sister say? Are you kidding me? My deadbeat brother got another gift, and he's going to get away with this crap? And I'm the one who's responsible? And what's my answer? Sorry, D. Right? So, to your point, or to your question, the nursing home wants to get paid. So, because Pennsylvania has allowed the use of this statute, which in my opinion was never intended for what it was used for, we have a phrase in the law that says bad facts make bad law. Well, there was a case that came down that arguably one child took money. Now, we don't know exactly what happened because no one's disclosing the facts, but we're pretty certain someone stole money. He then disappears and goes to Greece. Well, mom goes into the nursing home. They look back 5 years. They find the $93,000 transfer. The judge gets angry at this child because it's very clear what happened. The child took the money and left and went to Greece. Didn't even go to Maryland. Went to Greece. I believe what happened was the judge got angry and said, I'm going to find a way to hold this child responsible. But at that time in the law, there was no way to hold a child responsible. Unless the child personally guaranteed the debt, you couldn't. But there was always this statute on the books, and no state had ever enacted it. No state had ever used it in this context. And you know what my phrase is? You have a friend in Pennsylvania. So the son ended up being held liable. For whatever reason, the son didn't choose to bring in his siblings. Now, in hindsight, he should have, because they would have been equally responsible. But what I guessed happened was he knew he did it. He also probably believed that there was no way the nursing home could win. So he and his lawyer probably decided, don't bring in your family. They can't find you liable. There's no way. Well, they forgot about that statute that was on the books. Now, for those of you in the room, that statute is not meant to scare you, and you shouldn't be worried about it. What? Here's why. A nursing home can only sue you if they are owed what? Money. Well, what I just told you 20 minutes ago was that in a married couple situation, we can protect 100% of the assets. And then in a single individual case, we can protect at least 50 to 60% of the assets. So in a case where a person goes to an elder law attorney immediately, they're never going to owe money to the nursing home because the nursing home bills are going to be paid, right, by Medicaid. So really the point of it for me is that it should show you that as a child, you do have an interest in your parents. You do want to make sure that they get planning done, whether it's pre-planning or crisis. Doing nothing and burying your head in the sand isn't going to help anymore because you can still be liable. But if you get them to professional help who knows what they're doing, you will never get sued because your kids will never owe money. Thank you for the question. It was awesome.
I have heard that statute is expanded to include any relative with the means or something.
I have not. So what he said was that he understands that statute was expanded to any relative. I have not.
Financial means or something.
No, here's what I can say. Is it possible that it came out and I didn't hear about it? Yeah, that's possible. But I've read the actual statute, and it was actual statute that was on the books. It clearly says child, parent, or spouse. So I would be hard pressed to believe that they were able to expand it because it would have taken the legislature to do it. And if it took the legislature to do it, I probably would have heard about it. But I'm not perfect. My wife will tell you. So my gut says that it's child, parent, or spouse. We had a case about 6 months ago that we received a letter from an attorney for a nursing home threatening a nephew because the nephew was the power of attorney and the nephew signed the person into the nursing home, but only as the power of attorney. And I sent a letter back and said, pound sand. here's the filial responsibility statute. He's not a child, parent, or spouse. You have no bearing, no standing, go away. And the attorney basically called me and said, well, I was just trying to puff out my chest to see if he would pay.
Maybe that's occurred and that's how we're.
I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. I'm not sure, but in that case, that attorney decided to back down. I think he knew he didn't have a case. He was just trying to see. And remember, because the guy signed his power of attorney, I could see where a person would think, okay, maybe I am liable. But he did come to me. I sent the letter, and to my knowledge, it's completely went away. So I'm guessing that it's still parent, child, or spouse, but I'm willing to be proven wrong. So thank you so much. All right, now I'm going to take a break for 2 minutes so that Michelle can grab the microphone, and then she's going to take over. Remember, in the second half, if any questions come up that are legal technical related, write them down, come in for the free consult. I will answer them free of charge. Also, don't underestimate Michelle's ability to answer questions. So when the video's over, she probably could stick around for a few minutes. Is that okay? And answer any questions. And if together you can't come up with the answers, I'm certainly more than happy to meet with you. Thank you all very much. Have a great weekend. Thank you.
My name is Michelle Poole. I was for several years the director of Medicaid, which is why I'm doing the second half. I can tell you that my experience has shown me that when I think I've seen it all, I haven't. In fact, I just said to Christine today, who is currently our director of Medicaid, I said, do me a favor, and if you run into situations that surprise you, tell me about them, because I like to be able to give people a heads up. Because it's amazing the situations that we come across that actually I see light bulbs come on in people's eyes when I say it. Because suddenly it's like, oh man, that's us. So when you get these unique situations, it really, really helps other people to think about things that they might have done, that they already did, that they may be able to fix. So I was just literally said today when I came in before this meeting, do me a favor and clue me in on anything new that happens so that I'm aware of it and I can add it to my list of warnings. Medicaid application process. First piece of advice, it takes time. Lots of time. It's not a fast process. As you will see as I go through this, there's a lot of documents you have to gather. There's a lot of information that you have to give. When Jeff was in tax land and then he went to long-term care land, he was talking about gifting. The two things that the County Assistance Office is looking for, the two main things that they're looking for when they're looking at these documents is, number one, did you give anything away that could have paid for your care? And number two is, are you hiding any income that might be coming in that you could help pay for your care? So every transaction that takes place in every document has to be followed. We're going to cover today the different documents that you have to collect. The first thing I'm going to have you do is in your folder, when Jeff was pulling through these things, he said that the Medicaid qualification checklist. I'm going to go through this checklist in order, so feel free to jot down notes for yourself when you're doing so, because I'm going to start at the top and work our way down. I can hear everybody looking for it. We're going to talk about personal information, medical and health insurance, residence, shelter, real property, life insurance, burial, motor vehicles, and all your other resources. The very first thing on your list is your personal information. Don't most of our things look like that? I always love getting my picture taken for my driver's license. You need a photo ID. It can be your driver's license, it can be just an ID, it can be your gun permit, it can be your passport, as long as it has your name, your face, and it's a legal document, that shows that the person that they have in front of them is the person that they're providing the care for and the money for. They need a picture and they need the identification. Here's the thing, if it is a married couple, and this is the thing I want you to remember through all this document collection of every kind. If it's a married couple, we need all the documents for both people. Even though the Medicaid qualification is for the individual going into nursing care, whether it be at home or in a nursing home, we have to have the information for both the husband and the wife. If it's a single person, obviously it's only the person going into nursing care. But when we have a married couple, you're really applying as a couple. Basically, all the information is for the couple. So you need your birth certificates, your Social Security cards, your marriage certificate, and divorce decrees. Why would we want a divorce decree? Anybody have an idea? Anybody divorced in here? Okay. Because if you have a divorce decree, in the decree it will say, you owe alimony to this person. You owe child support. So in that decree, it tells the caseworker, are there financial obligations outside of this marriage that have to be met before the nursing home bill is met? So we need the divorce decree for either one of the spouses, whether it be the one in the nursing home or the one out in the community, either one. If it's a single person and they were married, we need the death certificate. We need the power of attorney, and Jeff went over this in detail, of the person going into the nursing home. And now we know why that's so important, because that document gives us the ability to protect assets and do what we need to do to protect everything for the person in the community or for the person going into the nursing home for their family. And then the military discharge. The military discharge is important because when he talked about the VA benefits, the caseworker is looking at what all benefits could help pay this bill besides the Medicaid. So they want to know what the military discharge information is and see if there's a possibility of getting additional funds. Now, we need the medical and health insurance. Medicaid cards for both people, health insurance cards, both people, that's all supplemental insurances. The health insurance premium notice is what we need. The notice states how much it's going to cost in that year for each month. Not the bill, but the premium notice is what needs to be provided. Now, one of the important things about the insurance is that when the person goes into the nursing home will take over the cost of the supplemental insurance for the person going into the nursing home. They want you to keep the supplemental insurance because that helps pay for the medications and part of their medical care. So you aren't going to get rid of that when the person gets Medicaid. So you want to keep that. They will actually take care of adjusting the bill to accommodate for that. We need copies of the nursing home bills. Every nursing home has different fees. And when we're trying to figure out what your daily costs of care is going to be, for us to figure out how much money is going to be needed to pay for their care, we need to know that, so we need the nursing home bills, if there are any in existence. The final part of this is patient medical review. One of the 3 prongs that Jeff talked about was that you needed to be, number 1, medically qualified. The way we find out if they're medically qualified is by what's known as an MA51. The MA51 is completed by the doctor. The doctor determines that they are nursing home qualified. Why do I say it that way? I say it that way because if you're at home, are you in the nursing home? No. but you can get Medicaid for in-home care. So you're simply nursing home qualified. The other way that you're determined eligible is if York Area Agency on Aging or the Agency on Aging, whatever county you are in, comes in and they do an assessment. It's called an assessment determination, and they assess their ability to do those 6 actually, but they have to have 3 that they're incapable of doing for the activities of daily living, or severe and chronic dementia. So the the Agency on Aging comes in and they do an evaluation. If they determine that there's 3 or the dementia, then they will also claim that, yes, this person is nursing home qualified. So that's really the first thing you want to do, is make sure that the person has been deemed nursing home qualified, either by the doctor or by the Agency on Aging. You can, one or the other works. You have both by the time it's all said and done when you're submitting to the county. Now, if you have a home, whether it be rented or owned, we need the residence and shelter information. We only need the most current. They don't need 5 years worth of that. The 5 years, AKA 60 months, look back, that's all your financial documents, okay? That's the only thing you need 5 years worth of as far as that goes. You don't need 5 years worth of homeowners' bills or anything like that. But why do you think they need to know what the costs are to maintain the home?
For an allowance.
Right, for the spousal allowance. If the person living in the home can't pay the bills, they're not going to be able to keep the home. They have a set allowance that they set each year that they use for that number. If your amount is higher than that, you can appeal that. But for the most part, most people don't end up going over that allowance. But we need the current utility bills. We need the water and sewer bill, if there is water and sewer, the trash bill. If, for example, you're renting, or you yourself, the community spouse, is actually living in an assisted living home, we would need that bill, because that is the cost of their home, their care. So we have to have all the residence and shelter information, whatever bills those might be. If you have an HOA, we need the HOA bill for the year. Income information. Jeff talked about the fact that for the most part, they look at your Social Security and your pension of the person going into the nursing home. They also look at the income of the person in the community. Again, very often what I've seen is that if we have the husband who's gone into the nursing home and the wife is at home, many times the husband's income is much higher than the wife's. She probably was the caregiver of the kids. She was probably home most of their married life. And so her income might only be $500 a month from Social Security, and she doesn't have a pension. With his money, he may have $2,000 a month coming in. And Jeff talked about the 2205. They're going to take his income, or a portion depending on how much his income is, and give that to her to help maintain her home. So we have to have the Social Security benefits for both husband and wife, and that's the benefits letter, not the 1099 that you get at the end of the year, because we need the benefits letter that states, here's how much we're going to get in gross, then this is how much we pay in Medicare, and this is the net amount that we get. And we have to report the gross amount. We also report within the Medicaid application your insurances, so the Medicare is written down on that part of it as a deduction. If there's annuity income, dividend income, IRA distributions, interest income, disability income, rental income, if you have a rental property that you need to give us that information as well. I have had younger clients, as Jeff pointed out. But good things happen or bad things happen to good people. I've had younger clients where we've had wages, salaries, to look at. One person, I was able to just simply get a letter from the business that he worked for stating this is how much in a month he generally makes, and these are the benefits that he gets. If they won't do a general letter like that, you usually have to do about a year's worth of your stubs from your pay stubs. And especially if, in the case of, I have older people who are still working part-time, the part-time job that they have may vary a great deal on how much they make from one week to a next. So we definitely have to have the pay stubs for a year so that they can look at, in average, what does this person bring in, so we can compensate with the money from the person in the nursing home. And then we have to have 5 years. This is one of the 5 years, or 60 months, of income tax returns, including all the 1099s. Now, some of you here might say, but I don't make enough to file. You still have to turn in the 1099s. We do a statement that says that you have not filed taxes for whatever the reason was, or if you have a tax preparer that has been preparing your taxes and they filed some part of it and not another, we usually get a letter from that tax preparer that says they were not required by law to submit the tax returns, and then we just put that with the 1099s. What do the 1099s do for us? And for the county? It tells us what people have. That's where we find the things that people forgot they did. Because think about it, 5 years doesn't seem like that long, but it is. You know, we lose track of time, and we don't always remember the things that we've done, particularly when you're talking about CDs and things that may change. You may have closed a savings account and you opened another one and you didn't even think about it, or you had an account that was just your Christmas fund, and then you decided, oh, why am I hanging on to this? It's just a pain. I might as well get rid of it. But here's the thing. You have to have every account that was opened in the last 5 years. So those 1099s clue us into, oh, we had something here that we need to find information on. Because the last thing we want is to get all this stuff down to the county assistant's office and they go, hey, what's this account? Where are they hiding money? Because their perspective is prove that you don't have it and that you didn't give it away. Real property, that's our homes, our cabins on the river, our cabins in the mountain, our house that we live in, our whatever we own that would have a deed. We need the current tax bills. That's part of that pile of what does it cost us to live there. It also gives us the current assessed value. Now we're going to get a little lesson on gifting, as well as the value of the properties. You'll note here it says property appraisal if it exists. Most of the time we do not have an appraisal for a property, and you don't really need it. Your tax bill gives an assessed value, and in every county they assess periodically. Based on how often they assess, they have what's called a common level ratio that they use to multiply the assessed value by to determine what the real value is. In your county, it's 1.15. So, if my house is worth $100,000 and I multiply it by 1.15, it's not really that big deal. Now, here's a lesson to learn. I was sitting at the table one day with a family and the wife of the gentleman who was in the nursing home, and we were talking about getting the deeds for the properties that they owned and owned within the last 5 years. All of a sudden, I saw the light bulb go on in one of the kids' eyes. Mom and Dad gave us kids the cabin up in whatever county. I don't remember what county it was. And I went, oh, okay. How much is that cabin worth? He said, well, I have the tax bill and it says it's only worth $20,000. I said, well, that's not too bad. What county is it in? And then he told me. I got the common level ratio chart and looked up the county. 5 times the 20,000 was the common level ratio. That little gift became a big gift real fast. $100,000 worth of gift. Divided by, now Jeff gave you the exact number, but I like to use the $300 a day deal. That makes it easier to figure out how many days you're going to be penalized for before you can get Medicaid. Thankfully, they were able to transfer the cabin back to mom and dad. They discussed buying it from them, but nobody could come up with the money that was necessary because it's valued at $100,000. What do we have to give mom and dad for that property? $100,000, exactly. So we need the deeds for all the properties, whether it be the one you're living in or the one that you go to visit on the weekends and on vacations. Now, in Medicaid, you can exempt one property that you live in. You can have one property you live in exempt. So the house would be exempt. The cabin would be an asset. So you have $100,000 worth of assets in the cabin. What do you think we're probably going to have to do? Sell the cabin. Yes?
But timeshares, like,
Timeshares,
they have a value.
they do have a value, not much of one. I know from experience. Most timeshares don't have that much value that they make a huge difference. They just don't. They're about...
Well, you need to report that.
You do report that, yes. The timeshare, if it is a deeded timeshare, we have to have a copy of the deed. I personally have a deeded have a deeded timeshare, so I have deeds to mine. So I would have to turn them in. And then we would have to determine what the value of that is. But considering the fact that most timeshares you're buying a week of a year, the value of it isn't substantial. It's the actual physical properties that create the real headache when it comes to dealing with Medicaid. And property appraisal, I said if it exists, sometimes that works against you, sometimes it doesn't help at all. What works against you, sometimes it works for you. Most of the time I've seen when we did get an appraisal, the appraisal ended up being higher than the common level ratio. So we ditch the appraisal and we go with the assessed value. There's no rule that says you have to get it appraised. So you take whichever one is the better choice. And if you sell a property, we have to have the HUD statement. And we also have to report where did that money go. If you reinvested it in another home, that's fine. If you put it in an account, a brokerage account, we just have to know that money went from the house into that brokerage account. It's always follow the money. We spend a ton of time looking at every single solitary piece of paper that we're given and tracking where did the money go. If you cashed out this, where did it go to? Life insurance. Warning, 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 warning. This is my nightmare. Every time you deal with a life insurance company, please do yourself a favor. If you're the power of attorney, send them the power of attorney every single time. Because unfortunately, when you're dealing with those companies, there's lots of departments and lots of different people, and they don't necessarily talk to each other. I had a client that I said to them, what you need to do is, I want you to contact the insurance company, because when we get the policies and we get the current cash value, when we talk about financial planning in order to protect assets, the first thing we're doing is collecting all the information. What do we really have in assets all total? That includes the cash value of life insurance policies. That includes homes and cars and all those things. So we get them all together and we have to look at them as a whole and then decide, what do we need to do? Do we hang on to the life insurance policy, or would we be better off to get rid of the life insurance policy and pre-purchase a burial? So we don't necessarily, or should we change the ownership from the husband to the wife, or vice versa, depending on who's in the nursing home? We have to look at the whole picture and determine what we need to do. So what we tell you when you first come in is get a copy, contact them to ask for the current cash value statement, and then ask them for the change of ownership, change of beneficiary, and the surrender forms. You want all those forms to use. Now, why would you want to change the beneficiary on any of them? Any thoughts? Do we want the person in the nursing home to inherit a life insurance?
No.
No, we don't. So one of the things we need to do is if the spouse that's not going into the nursing home has their husband or wife as their beneficiary, we want them to change that because we don't want them to get knocked off of Social Security, or excuse me, Medicaid because they inherited an insurance policy when their spouse passed away. And it does happen that way. So when you request the cash value, also request the change of ownership, change of beneficiary, and the surrender forms because you may need to do any or all of the above depending on what policies each one of them have. Also make sure, and I've had this happen, that no one else has them as a beneficiary. I had one client whose brother had him as a beneficiary. And thankfully the wife knew that, so we were able to get him to change his as well. So the example I give, I literally had put the Medicaid application in. We were only waiting for a cash out on one of the life insurance policies to be finalized so that we could get that information to the county assistance office. And they sent the power of attorney to the insurance company. They got the forms back. They filled out the forms. Now, if you sent your power of attorney in and you got your forms in and you filled out the forms and sent them in, wouldn't you expect them to process them? 40 days later, we got a letter saying, we're sorry, we can't process your paperwork because we don't have a copy of the power of attorney. Yes, you do. But they didn't have it. They didn't know where it was. So we ended up having to appeal because we had to be denied because it was not done in timely manner, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Ultimately, we got it all straightened out and we got them all approved, but it was a big headache and a stress that wasn't necessary. So just a heads up, do yourself a favor, never send, if you're the power of attorney, whenever you send paperwork to somebody, send a copy of the power of attorney with it. It's well worth the paper you printed it on. Now, motor vehicles. You're allowed to have exempt one motor vehicle. Every motor vehicle that you have. Now, that includes cars, trucks, RVs, boats, motorcycles, trailers. All of those are motor vehicles. If you have a 1955 Fairlane convertible that's worth $22,000, or you have a 1992 Chevy that's worth $2,000, which one do you think we're going to claim? We're going for the Fairlane because that has the most value. We want that exempt because when we're looking at what a person is allowed to keep for assets, that pile suddenly can get really big when you're talking about a vehicle like that. And they don't state what item has to be exempted. They just say that one vehicle can be exempted. So all of the other vehicles you have, whether it be an ATV, a snowmobile, if it's licensed, it's considered a vehicle and it's an asset. We have to have the title and registration for each one, and we need the model and mileage. The reason I say model and mileage, I could not tell you the number of people who I sent the letter out, my checklist of, here are the things we still need. You sent me these things, I still need these. And I say, I need the model and the mileage of the vehicle. I gave you all that. It's on title and registration. No, it's not. The model is nowhere on your title and registration. Nowhere. Mileage, obviously, whatever the current mileage is, because what we have to do is we have to value each and every vehicle. And again, we're figuring out which one has the most value to exempt. And then the other ones count as part of the assets that have to be counted for what we can protect or what we decide we want to keep or don't want to keep. And that includes all vehicles sold or traded in the last 5 years. Now, another warning. I know that grandparents love to give their grandkids the car. Remember, that's a gift. Thankfully, they accept the value that is in Kelley Blue Book. And most of the times when grandma and grandpa are giving the car to their grandkid, it probably doesn't have a ton of value. So before you give away the car, just think about, okay, what's this worth? How much is it going to penalize? And remember, as long as it ends up outside of the 5 years, it doesn't count against you. But if it isn't that 5 years, it's going to count as part of the penalty. Now, here's the next warning, warning, warning. Y'all remember that television show, don't you? Everyone in here, I think, is old enough to remember that. Savings bonds. Here's another life experience that I had. Savings bonds, when you send them in, the bank doesn't make copies of them. Neither does the National Treasury when you send them in. They just send you your money, which to you would be fine. Automatic deposit right into the account, we're good. No, we're not. Because unfortunately, with the lovely direct deposit, all it says on that direct deposit is the National Treasury. Doesn't say what it is, doesn't say what it was for, and it does not detail what it was for. I had the county assistant's office say, well, where did this $23,000 come from? It came from savings bonds. Well, how do we know that? Because she told me that that's where they came from. That's not good enough. Well, I will tell you that I talked to a very lovely gentleman in Minnesota at the National Treasury who was really willing to help me, but he couldn't because I didn't have any numbers. So, if you have any savings bonds, please make copies of them before you send them in to be cashed in. Because without the copies of them, we can't prove that you cashed them and that they no longer exist. Okay? The other piece of advice, don't give your grandchildren savings bonds that you put your name on too. Because if you do, they're going to have to give them back to you to cash in, or they're a gift. If you give it to them outright, nobody's going to notice. But if your name's still on them, they count them as your asset, not as the child's asset. I had that happen too. Nothing worse than having to take back gifts that you gave to your grandchildren. So, 2 things on savings bonds. If you're going to give them away, which is a wonderful thing, don't put your name on them. And number 2, always make copies of all your savings bonds, whether you cash them or not, make sure you have a copy of them. Now, these are all the things that we have to have 5 years worth of documents for. Money markets, stock certificates, savings accounts, checking accounts, brokerage accounts, credit union accounts, certificates of deposits, retirements, Roth, 401 IRA. Now, I know that brokerage account paperwork is about 32 pages. We have to have all the pages. All of them. Doesn't matter if one page has an ad on it. Doesn't matter. They don't care. They want to know what was on that page. Because how do they know what was on that page? That could have been money that you were hiding. Page 8, why isn't page 8 here? Well, it was an ad. They don't know that. So we have to have all the pages. If you have a bank account, thankfully, some of the banks put their ads and don't number those pages, thankfully, but some of them still do. And if it says page 1 of 4, we better have all 4 pages. We can't just have the statement. That's one of the biggest problems I run into when people brought me paperwork, is that they would bring me what they thought was important, and then would get upset when I'd come back and say, I need the whole thing. So you have to have all the pages of every document. And you need, if you have a trust, now Jeff talked about pre-planning. Even if you did pre-planning, sometimes you have trusts in place that you didn't make it the 5 years. You didn't make it as far as you thought you were going to make it. We have to have the trust document, identify any assets that were funded in the trust, provide 60 months of financial statements for any of the accounts that are in the trust, the passbooks, and any deeds for things that went in the trust. I don't get heavily into this because the few trusts I've dealt with, we were in that situation where they did it and it was like a year later and had to back up and start over. So when that happens, you end up liquidating everything and going backwards again. Now, here's another warning, warning, warning. Please don't use cash. Not for big chunks, okay? A lot of people like to take out $1,000, $2,000 and stick it under the bed mattress and just pull it out as they need it to spend. The problem with that is on your bank statement, it says $2,000 cash. And what does the county assistant's office say? What happened to that cash? Do you have any proof that it wasn't a gift? They go on the assumption that you are guilty unless proven not guilty. So having chunks of cash coming out and having no way to track it is a nightmare. So those of you sitting here today that can make a change in how you manage your money, it's fine to take out a couple $100 and use it at a time, but keep it for sure under $500. Currently, York County is looking at transactions $500 or more. Though, remember I said I had a conversation with Christine before I came down here. She said, we just learned a little lesson. She said, because one of the banks still gives all the checks for all of the transactions in a copy as part of the statement, they saw that every month they were paying out each week a couple $100 to the same person over and over again. Red flag, not one of them was over $500, but because they could see the check and could see that it was to the same person every month, every week for months, they wanted to know, where'd that money go? And who is this person? Is this a gift? Are they getting something in exchange? Luckily, it was a caregiver. They had brought in a caregiver. And this is another heads up. If you are having a caregiver in your home, get a caregiver's agreement. That's the easiest way to document what they're doing. Make sure you state what they're doing and for how much money they're doing it, so that you have that as proof when you go to submit the Medicaid. So, when we're verifying, what we are required to send them is any checks that are $500 or more. Now, how many of you do online banking? Okay. What you'll notice on your statements for your online banking is that it'll state that it's MedEd or that it's the Discover card. If you have that, you don't need the actual check. If it says check number such and such, and that's all it says, then you've got to have a copy of that check if it's $500 or more. In your county currently, they are only looking at the $500 or more. Legally, they can look at it in aggregate. Remember the conversation just a few seconds ago about paying that person every week several $100s? it was more than $500. So when they don't get the page full of checks, it's not a bad thing. And I'll tell you one more story about that. When I was dealing with a couple, there were 2 checks written in Nationwide. One was for $76 and one was for $120. And I got a letter from the county assistant's office. What were these for? Why do you think they cared? What might they be?
It's an insurance company.
Right, it's an insurance company. Could it be a life insurance policy they aren't telling us about? I had to get the insurance agent to write a letter to the county assistant's office stating that one of the accounts that it was paying for the car insurance partial payment, the other was for a partial payment of the homeowner's insurance. And I got that back to them. Thankfully, that was what it was, and it wasn't a problem. But again, neither one of those checks was over $500. They were both well below it, but it sent up a red flag for them. So these are the things that we look for. What are going to be those red flags? They verify all withdrawals $500 or more. If you withdraw, whether it be cash at the ATM or a check, we have to have documentation of what that withdrawal was. That's why cash is such a nightmare. We also have to verify all deposits. And when I say verify deposit, we need the deposit slip and all the documents that are part of that. Actually, that turns out to be really helpful sometimes for us, because we'll have this $3,520 and some odd cents deposit, and in that are documents, and one might turn out to be, hey, there's that CD we were looking for that they cashed out. The check's in there, that they couldn't remember what they did with it. So that's actually quite helpful often for us. So they verify every deposit $500 or more. Now, things you can do to plan ahead. Currently, those of you who are not in the crisis mode right now and are the kids, my advice to you is start making a habit of keeping 5 years worth of documents for yourself, even if it's just in your computer. Right now, for the most part, most banks, if you were doing online banking, you can look back about 2 years and get all of your statements and get all of your checks. Unfortunately, most banks do not put the deposits on there. That you actually have to go to the bank for. But unfortunately, the banks are charging. Sometimes they don't, sometimes they do. I will tell you, the better relationship you have with the people at your bank, the less likely you are to get charged. And the more cooperative and helpful they are in getting you through this process. So this includes all accounts, whether they be open or closed, over the last 5 years. And that's true for deposits and withdrawals. So even if you closed it 4 years ago, we're going to have at least that 1 year's worth of statements, 1 year's worth of deposits and withdrawals for that account. Now, the red line that Jeff was talking about, the chart that you have in here, the whole first part is the collection of all these documents, making sure that we have everything. Why is that important? Because if we're missing documents, that we don't have all the details of transactions, if we submit and then all of a sudden we've done all the planning, we've done all of the protection of assets, and then all of a sudden we find out there was a gift that we missed, that's a penalty that we're not going to have the money for necessarily, or not the money that we want to have to cover that gift. It wasn't part of the planning. So before we do planning, we want to have all the documents in place. And that, again, time. It takes time. At the front end, it takes time. Once we get all the documents and then we do the planning, we can submit the Medicaid application. We sign all the legal documents, we do the financial part of the plan, we complete and sign the Medicaid application. Now, the resource assessment. When you have a married couple, only when you have a married couple, you do a resource assessment. That is the moment in time that the person going into the nursing home or requiring nursing home care was determined to be nursing home qualified. That's, if they're going into the nursing home, that would be the day they go into the nursing home. If they're at home, it's the day they are assessed to be determined to be nursing home qualified. So what we have to do is we literally take the statements from every single account and every single thing you have and say the value of it on that date is this much. And we put together the resource assessment lists all the assets on that moment in time. And that gives us our number that we work from that determines how much you're allowed to keep. The example I use is if you have $100,000 worth of assets, technically in a married couple, you can keep up to half or $120,900. Half or up to. So if you have $100,000 in assets, you're allowed to keep how much? $50,000. Right. We protect the rest of it. Okay? With with what we do here. If you had $300,000, how much would you be able to keep? $120,900. Everything above that is what we have to protect. So this resource assessment says, okay, at this moment in time, how much money did they have? If they had the $100,000, okay, $50,000 is what we're allowed to keep. Everything above that, we got to figure out how we're going to protect it. If they have $300,000, all right, you're allowed to keep $120,000. Now you have to look at all your assets and go, what do I want to keep? What don't I want to keep? What do we have to do to protect the rest of it? Okay? So that's why the resource assessment is important, which is also why I always advise people, don't start spending money until you sit down with the attorney and go over all this. Because you want to know that the resource assessment date, that you haven't spent money that you could have protected. Okay? Now, we submit the application. Remember I said time? Yes. Takes time. Yes, we submit and it goes back and forth because you know what? They're looking at all the things that we looked at, and unfortunately they're looking at it on a computer screen. They don't get to take the big piles of piece of paper and set them to the side and go, oh, that's right, let me see, I'm going to put that here because I think I remember seeing that over here. They don't have that luxury, unfortunately. They're looking at it on a computer screen, so they miss things. We save exact copies of what we send to them so that we can go through and pull the things that they might have missed when we send it down to them. Sometimes they find things that put red flags up for them and they send us a notice. We have a great relationship with them, so they tend to just email us. Unfortunately, when you deal with snail mail, they may look at it one day and it's 15 days before you get the letter. So it's wonderful that we go back and forth via email or telephone. They have 30 days to review it initially. They have 30 days to review. It can be day 29 that they look at it the first time. That, if they then send us a letter or an email or whatever saying, we want to see this, 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 and this, it buys them 15 more days to a tune of 45 days. Day 45, they must approve or deny. Must. What's the problem with that when it's 2 days before Christmas when you get that letter? How many banks are available? How many things can you get? It's really hard. It is more often than not that we end up getting a denial letter. It's not a big deal. The denial is because we ran out of time. We didn't have enough time to get what they were asking for. When you get the denial, you have 30 days to appeal. We turn around, send the appeal stating we didn't have enough time to get the information they were requesting, which buys us more time, okay? So I've had many people, and that's one of the reasons we started this workshop. When we were dealing with people and I would sit down and talk to them, number one, they looked like a deer in headlights because I was telling them all of this for the first time when I sat down with them the first time to go over all the things I needed. And they had no concept of the amount of time that it was going to take. They thought that by the end of the month they should have the Medicaid application in. And that isn't happening because you can't get all the information that you need in that period of time. And we literally look at every single piece of paper. We have to, in order to make sure that we have all of the details of everything. It's imperative. And then once we submit, more time can go by. The good news is the day we submit, the person is nursing home qualified, is Medicaid pending. The nursing home stops billing at that point. They don't want to have to readjust everything. So they'll put a hold on the bill until they process all the paperwork. And then once they get the letter from the state saying, okay, we're going to start paying on this date, then they will adjust and go from there. So you at least don't have that bill still coming in because the Medicaid will go back to the date that you were qualified. That means medically and financially qualified. So if, for example, we do the financial part, you're already medically when you're dealing with us. We do the financial part, say August 1st. But by the time we finish getting all the paper to work together, it's a month or so later, they'll go back to August 1st. They will go back as far as 3 months. So you don't have to worry about that part of it. It's just that, again, this process takes time. If you get a favorable decision, yay! You get the effective date. You get the patient's payment towards cost of care. If there's transfer of income from the patient to the spouse, it says exactly how much that person needs to pay. And then there's the $45, which is the current personal needs allowance. Ultimately, what we end up doing is we have a separate account for the person in the nursing home, totally separate, that their income goes into. And from that account, the spouse pays themselves, they pay the nursing home, and they keep the money in there that's for the personal needs. That keeps it clean because after you do the planning, the state never looks at the spouse in the community's assets again. So when they annually review the Medicaid application, and they do it every year, they're only looking at the income of both people, the expenses of both people, and the amount that is of the account that is in the nursing home. They look at the nursing home person's bank account only. So, assets, once you get through this process, you can do whatever you want. But they still look at your costs, your income, and they look at the bank statement of the person in the nursing home. Okay? If you get an unfavorable decision, the decision will state why it was denied, the information on how to appeal the decision. You have the right to appeal within 30 days, whether it's favorable or unfavorable. When might you get an unfavorable or favorable decision that you might want to appeal? I'll give you an example. We had one where Jeff talked about somebody inherit the house. Mom gave the house away. Mom gave the house away to her 2 sons. One son gave it back. One son didn't. So guess what we got? Penalty of $60,000 because the house was worth $120,000. Guess what? Mom didn't have any money left because it got spent on paying the nursing home. Yeah. Well, what was the decision? The decision was she qualifies for Medicaid, but she's being penalized for $60,000, which is the equivalent of about 6 months of nursing home care. Who's going to pay that? Well, we appealed. Unfortunately, we didn't win the appeal because we appealed on hardship, stating she didn't have the money to pay it. Well, their position was, we're going after the son, because he didn't give it back. And, you know, you can't blame them. Why should they grant an appeal for that when there's someone who they can go after that legitimately, in our opinion too, should be gone after? So you do, if you get a penalty that, for example, if they find a certain amount of money in your accounts that you insist you used for cash and they insist you gave it away, you have the right to appeal and say, no, I shouldn't be penalized for that. This is what I did, and this is my proof of it, and to the best of my ability, and let a judge decide. Because you have the right to a fair hearing in front of an administrative law judge. So it's not the caseworker making the decision anymore, it's a judge. Hopefully what you came here to learn, you learned today. Are there any questions that I might be able to answer for you? All right. Well, if you have any other questions, as Jeff said, you are more than welcome to meet with him. Please, you've got an evaluation. I hope that we taught you something, that the time went fairly quickly, and that you were entertained. I'm not near as fun or funny as Jeff is. I cannot compete, and I'm not going to try.
You have a great smile.
Thank you. Thank you.